So I'm joined here by Tina Allton. We are in the fantastic Istanbul. We've got the Bosphorus behind us. It's a beautiful sunny day. And we're surrounded by investors downstairs. So it's already been a couple of full-on days for both of us. I know, meeting lots of people. But we have a global audience of investors that are looking for edge.
Yes.
So any information that they can get, and part of the reason why we're both here is to learn and get more of that. But you have a very unique background and also insights, I think, into a couple of key opportunities. So do you want to just very quickly give us your background, and then we'll get into those opportunities.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tina Allton. I was actually born in Ghana, raised up in Ghana, did my first degree in Ghana. And then 4 days after my first degree, I just ran away from home, and then the UK became home to me for some 20 plus years. Fast forward, I've done many other things. My background is psychology, so I've done change management in schools, been in healthcare, been in social impact, finance, teaching financial literacy education. And then finally, last year, just out of real frustration, we birthed the Chamber for Africa Diaspora Relations, which really focuses on everything Africa and how we can harness and mobilize the power of the Africa diaspora as part of its driving factors where we think economic development across the whole continent. So I sit as the CEO and the president for the chamber. And we've also launched our women's initiative, which is Nations of Women. Again, focused on women entrepreneurship, easing access to finance for female founders, leadership development, so we can get more women in politics, women in government, women in boards in every place you can think of for leadership. So amongst many other things, and I have 7 children, 1 grandbaby, and an amazing husband who allows me to go and do all of these things. So
okay, so let's go straight into the opportunities, because I know people want to know where are the biggest opportunities, and to me, Africa seems to be a little bit like where Asia was 20 or 30 years ago. It's growing, it's got a young population, a booming population. From a pure investment standpoint, I know you see opportunities everywhere, but from a pure investment opportunity, what should investors be looking at? Where do you see, over the next 10 years, where do you see the biggest opportunities in Africa?
No, that's a really good question, because like you said, globally, Africa is the single continent. Actually, like 54 unique countries that makes the continent. And we're the single continent that has over 40% of its 40% of the entire population of the continent under 18. So if you look within the next 10 years, we're going to be the single continent that has the largest
growing population.
Working population. As far as investment, what to look for, the first thing I say to an investor, for a long time, Africa's had the stigma of corruption and all of those things. But I'm really excited to actually report that is changing, because more and more people are holding their governments accountable, but still doesn't come with the challenges. So yes, the opportunities are there, but the first thing when we're looking at any investment is look at the political nature. So if it's an election year, for example, then all those affect the investment. But if we're looking at where we can get the best investment currently across Africa, the 3 countries that are really, really like hot spots for leading, investment: South Africa, Morocco, Egypt, Kenya. If you're looking at industries, fintech is the fastest growing sector industry across of all of Africa for like great investment and really exciting returns, followed closely by health tech and then agri-tech. Those are the 3 key sectors.
Just drill into some of that. So I think right at the top there, you pulled me up on Africa, and it's a little bit like when people say investing in Asia, and it's the same thing. Like Singapore is so different from Thailand, is so different from China, and I guess it's the same in Europe. It's an easy bracket, but you're absolutely right. So the countries that you just mentioned, are those the ones where you're seeing more developed economies, and perhaps it's just easier for investors to get in? Is that why you put those countries?
It's a bit of both. For example, if you take Nigeria, yes, the economy is developed, but if in comparison to Rwanda, you would say Rwanda is, Rwanda currently has the best banking system in the entire world.
Okay.
Is Rwanda.
Right.
But in comparison to Nigeria, Nigeria has the highest number of tech hubs across the whole continent. Nigeria alone single-handedly had the most funding into the continent. Nigeria and Kenya, last year it was about $1.2 billion that was invested into Africa. Nigeria and Kenya took 81.2% of that funding.
Okay,
about 40% went to Nigeria.
So let me just drill into that a second, because it's always, when you talk about conceptually big numbers going into a country, that's one thing. When you talk about individual investments, and I guess one of the things we can touch on is the best products or vehicles for companies to go. My understanding, just from very limited, I've had a few companies that have approached me from different countries that are looking for investment. Typically, it seems that the entry level for investors is probably still quite low in a lot of those countries. Is that right? Or?
Yes, because as we know, with any investment anywhere in the world, first thing is actually sourcing real good qualified deals.
Yeah.
And then because the landscape of Africa is very different, if you take North Africa to South Africa, to Eastern, to Western, Central, it's one continent, but it's very different. We even fight over food, right? So it's saying the challenges are almost the same, but it's changing because there's now more understanding of the geography, for example, of the economic, social governance landscape, if you will. There's more information. Governments in Africa are more open to sharing those information. So it's not too difficult like it was even 5 years ago or 10 years ago to understand the landscape of Africa. So yes, once an investor is able to identify qualified deals, trusted partners, those are still two key things.
So trusted partners is a key thing, and your point about corruption is very similar to kind of what everyone thought about Asia 20, 30 years ago. And of course, again, it comes down to if you know people on the ground and the value of creating a chamber type concept is all about that. So I guess that's a key thing, and connecting with your chamber is probably a good step for anyone wanting to get into the area. Are there particular, obviously from an external investor's perspective, stock markets are kind of the typical go-to option. What do you know in that space, and are there kind of ones to avoid, ones that sort of stand out?
In as much as yes, they've been around, much longer, but the continent of Africa has not been embracing that space as much and as quickly as the Western world. So, for example, we have one of our members that we've developed a platform. So we have literally every single agri product you can think of is available on the platform. Now these are successful enterprises, successful startups. Some are actually scale-ups, but their understanding of the stock market is like, no, I don't want to, because it's too volatile. And I think Africa is still young, if you will, to almost convince our governments to actually put more attention, more focus, and develop the structure in terms of even, the Africa stock market, stock exchange, for example. There are some in some countries, but you need buy-in. You need companies for it to work. But if they're resistant, then...
Yeah, interesting. And look, I mean, I think that's universal. That's not an Africa thing. I think that's most stock markets. The ones that we obviously know about, sort of London and New York, have been around for hundreds of years.
Yes.
Yeah, they've evolved over time. I mean, even New York, which is the biggest in the world, 60 years ago, its yearly volume of trades is pretty much what it does today in a day. So like the growth is enormous. So I think that there's some really interesting things about that, but you're right that they're probably not as mature and easy to get into and out of as typical traditional markets.
And lack of, expert understanding as well. Because, here in the Western world, it's easy. You can easily get access to an expert who understands, the stock market space. But in Africa, it's not so easy.
Yeah.
So I think we would need an input, if you will, from an expert like yourself, engaging with government, engaging with the right corporations, engaging even with investors, as well as the companies, the startups, to really get a better understanding on how it can bring real scale growth.
Sure. So I get that from an investor standpoint. Public markets are great for liquidity. They can get in, they can get out if things change. The really big opportunities and a lot of the reason why there's so many investors here today is angel investing.
Yes.
And look, it's a possibility rather than a probability play. It's like, well, is this the next Uber? What are some of, I mean, you've mentioned agri-tech, and certainly in my experience, the best deals that I've seen coming from different countries in Africa, to me personally, have been things like technology for beehives that significantly increases their yield and those sort of things. What are some of the trends, maybe even within agri-tech and something else that you're looking at, that an investor can go, okay, look, I'm interested, I want to get involved in Africa. What are the trends I should be looking at and why?
Thank you for that. So I have a startup based out in Kenya.
Okay.
And what they do is they're using drone technology, able to actually map the entire, farm, if you will, or land. They're able to, access areas that sometimes it's really, really hard to access. Using the same technology, we're able to do like soil testing quickly, see viability, and it's just incredible how probably even 3-4 years, we were still using the old manual technology to check some of these things. But the startup teamed up with, I can't remember the name of the accelerators, and also access to mentors meant that we were able to use existing technology, drone technology, AI, to then, combine that with the vision of, okay, I want to be able to soil test a vast area of land to actually then be able to identify, is this land viable for that product, right? And, what would the quality of products would be compared to if if it was sown in a different region, for example. So again, from agri-tech perspective, there's more efficiency, quality of produce is now increased, which means that Africa is now able, or Kenya is able to actually compete on the global market because of the quality.
Yeah, okay. So let's, so we've touched on liquidity. We've looked at getting alpha and getting big returns from, and I think it's going to be picking on those trends that take advantage of what's naturally there, but have that opportunity. I want to touch on impact, but the reason that I came to Alpha first is that people might think, Africa has had for, as a kid growing up, it was Band-Aid, it was Ethiopia, and people have been talking about charity for Africa for a long time. What we're talking about in terms of impact is about something that's a positive return, but it has to start for an investor. It has to start with the returns, which is why I started with that returns. Now, the challenge, and I've had this conversation with many people, is when you look at impact, it sounds great. So ESG and corporate responsibility, they all sound good until you start to drill in, and then it often kind of the devil is in the detail. If somebody is saying, look, I want to get a great return, but I also want to feel like I'm supporting a business that will have a real and genuine impact. Now, my background is to look at supporting small businesses where you can see tangible, measurable growth in employees. What's some of the impact investing that you're seeing that you go, you know what, look, if you're going to put 100 grand here or you're going to put 100 grand here it's going to make a real difference? And why is that?
So I love that. Thank you for asking that question, because we've actually worked with one of our partners for the chamber. We actually have the technology that can literally map the health and well-being of any city in the world.
Okay.
It breaks it down in over 36 areas, from health to sanitation, to water, to tourism, to what do you call it, quality of air, education, everything. Really looking at the Maslow's, law. So with that, and the best part is that it's unlike, some of the data you get from the IMF, World Bank is 10 years, because it takes a lot of time to develop these data. But our data is updated every 3 months.
Okay.
Every 3 months is updated. So with that, if an investor within our chamber is going into any country in Africa, for that matter, we're able to immediately, within a matter of 4 weeks, which is a month, able to identify where are the hotspots, which area will give them the most impact. Number one, because if okay, fine, it's sanitation, you may not necessarily be interested in that, but for an impact investor, knowing that is an area of greatest need, and therefore access to better taxation is easy to negotiate. You immediately touch the people, the quality of life, and therefore your ROI becomes bigger, more than just the number, currency, if you will, but you actually touching lives as well. And also allows governments to be more relaxed in terms of angel investors and the big part, particularly impact investors, and the big part that they can play in economic development. So that's what we say is know where you will hit the hardest.
I love that. And look, I'm cognizant of your time. We've got a lot of stuff going on today, so I'm going to keep this tight. But on a personal level, that to me is really, really interesting. And for those that have read my book, you'll know at the end of the book, I talk about creating entrepreneurial ecosystems. So there's always a risk when you back an entrepreneur. There's so many things that can go wrong, but I'm a huge believer that if you can create, or if you can back an entrepreneurial ecosystem that keeps attracting and supporting entrepreneurs, that's why cities survive for decades, centuries, and why many small businesses don't. So fantastic. I hadn't set that question up deliberately, but it's great that we came to the same answer. So we haven't had a chance to get into sort of the opportunities with women in investing and that yet. So maybe we'll have to do a second interview around that. But fantastic information. I genuinely think Africa is one of the most exciting investing opportunities right now. I'm going to be talking to some more of our colleagues downstairs about that. Do look into it. Connect with Tina. She's incredibly well connected in that space, and obviously
I'm connected to you, so that makes me connected.
Well, no, your awareness and again, so much of it's about trusted partners. So we'll put your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Connect to Tina, get involved, and I genuinely think that over the next 10 years. The growth potential there is going to be incredible, and it's just even if you just took a little, 1 or 2% of your portfolio and said, I'm going to start dabbling in that space, it'd be like 20 years ago starting to invest in China and seeing those opportunities. So thank you very much for your time.
And can I add though, what I really love about the book that you've just written is really filling a gap that's been there for so long. Because as investors, we're excited, we want to invest, but really taking the time to outline and to map out the key fundamentals that are often left out. For example, like talking about Africa, what would you even think of first of all before you go into Africa? The stock markets, the lack of education. Having money is good, but you have to have the right wisdom. And then the impact investment. I love the fact that you're focused on looking at not just, investing for the sake of impact, but actually wanting to make a difference.
But I think I think my timing got lucky. I think we seem to be in a sea change, and I think there's still a long way to go. There's a massive shift in thinking, but it's the conversation is shifting, and I think that's the key thing. But thank you for
taking the lead on that with the book. It's a great book. So if you haven't got it, get it. I recommend it.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you
everyone.
Yes.